Hi everybody, I'm your hot with Scott Kellner, and you are tuned in to Digital Mentorship. Digital Mentorship is a podcast designed to educate college, juniors, seniors, and current professionals about career possibilities. If you can think about what you wanted to do when you were declaring a major or getting ready to graduate, is that anything close to what you ended up doing? Do you think somebody else getting ready to graduate has any idea that a job or career or your business even exists? The goal of this podcast is to help narrow the gap between what individuals think their career must be and what it could be. Disclaimer time. Scott Kellner works in the private wealth management industry, and it's possible investments or securities are talked about in this podcast. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered investment advice.
Was the summer of the fall. I heard the gods of chaos call.
Hello and welcome to Digital Mentorship. I'm your host, your hot with Scott Kellner, and I'm so excited and happy to be joined today by my friend, Jaxson Perry. Jaxson and I know each other from working out at the gym at the local tennis club, and we spent a lot of time together in the gym. And I'm super excited today to talk to him. He's got an exciting career in CSM, working for a company called Dental Intelligence, and I can't wait to get into all of that stuff. Jaxson, how are you today?
I'm doing good. It's a little bit rainy here today, but I do love the good air quality that comes from it. So I'm doing good.
Good. And just a little bit about Jaxson. He grew up in Salt Lake City, went to Olympus High School. He's dedicated himself to being a lifelong learner, and he's found less traditional ways to educate himself. We'll get into a little bit of that. And I think, one of the interesting things, or one of my favorite things to do on the show to kind of like help people get to know you and play a little game is tell this game called Two Truths and a Lie. So you told me that you've fainted at the vets before. Your marathon time for the St. George Marathon was 2 hours and 45 minutes, which is that's pretty fast. That's fast. And you lived in Virginia for 3 years. I think I know the vet story of when you fainted, and I think I might be thinking about the wrong thing. And I know I feel like you're baiting me though with the St. George Marathon thing, but I'm going to go with the St. George Marathon time as a lie.
Oh man, you caught me.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my lie. I may have outed myself telling you the story about the vet. Yeah. So, yep, you caught me.
Yeah, I think but you have run the St. George Marathon.
I have. Yep.
And
Yep.
what was your time?
I'm not that fast.
Yeah.
It was a 3:15, which is still, really proud of it. But, 2:45 would be like rock solid.
Oh, right. Yeah. That's
I mean, that's a beyond solid. That's
Boston.
Like almost Olympic.
Yeah. That's correct. I've only done one half marathon. I was training for the Salt Lake Marathon when COVID happened. And
I
so
remember that.
I haven't run a full marathon, but I ran a 1:30 in the haunted half, and I thought my legs were going to fall off when I was done. I couldn't believe how sore I was, man. It was crazy. And so you did live in Virginia for 3 years then.
I did. Yeah. So when I was a kid, I mean, obviously it's not super memorable, but my parents, moved from Utah to Virginia, but also Illinois for some time. And then we, came back here. So I would definitely say I'm a local, born and raised in Utah, but, quick blip over there.
And I think, I don't know if this is the vet story about the bunny?
No, actually. So
Okay.
Yeah, funny story, full disclosure, a little bit embarrassing, but the vet story, I have a crazy fear of needles. And before anyone says like, that's ridiculous or whatever it is, I don't know what it is. I hate needles. Ever since I was a kid, I've hated needles. I never grew past it. I mean, I'll get a shot, but trust me, I don't enjoy it. It doesn't matter what it is. I don't enjoy it. And it's funny because people have asked, what about tattoos? I don't know why tattoos don't bother me at all. That's fine. As long as there's buzzing and there's some sort of vibration, it's not the same thing. It's honestly like a psychological fear with needles that it just goes undetected in my skin, and it freaks me out. Like it like fully like shuts me down. So my dog was getting a shot, and they had me hold my dog while it was getting this, this big shot, and it's really really stupid. But essentially, while they gave him the shot, I fainted.
Oh
I
my
completely went
God.
down. I fainted in the vet, like, and that's the first time that's actually happened to that degree. So I was really shocked myself. Yeah, I mean, I've had shots before when I'm sitting down. I've been in the doctors in the hospital or whatever, but I don't know. Apparently, watching my dog child get a shot knocked me out.
I haven't. I had to get a shot the other day for. Um, I had a physical the other day, and they did some blood work. It was the first time in a while that I've had a needle stuck in my arm, and it didn't used to. It hasn't bothered me that much before, but it was kind of uncomfortable this time for whatever reason. I felt like tense, like this apprehension of them like sticking me, like was like
Yeah,
super uncomfortable.
I should
For
probably
some
get over
reason.
my fear, especially with these COVID vaccines coming out, because I'm
Oh
definitely
yeah,
getting that. But
yeah. You don't want to be afraid of. You can't be afraid
maybe
of
I'll just
needles.
have my wife next to me holding me up just so I don't smack my head on the way down.
Well, that's super funny. Well, thank you for sharing that. And so I just want to talk a little bit. Let's get into it. So in terms of, we'll talk a little bit about where you've worked, where you've been, and then we'll get into where you are now. But so looking at your resume, you started out as an associate manager at Fresh Twist Tea and Yogurt. So I mean, that was probably kind of like your first job, as a young adult, and
Yeah.
and then from there you went to work as a strategic account manager at Brody Chemical. In the notes that you established a clear and consistent growth plan for seasonal and regional products, developed standard practices for newly founded inside sales team. This sounds a little bit of like kind of I know you're very passionate about creating processes for sales teams and ultimately like client success management. And so I feel like this is probably a little bit, I mean, do you feel like this is where you found that passion or that energy for that stuff?
I did. When I got in there, there was a lot of opportunity, and with opportunity, that means there's a lot of chaos. So, the opportunity to be able to really, make your mark on something and help others, is something that I found a love for, and really, really clicked in the professional world in that moment. I've always really loved, like automating people's lives, making it easier, giving people more freedom, kind of like bringing magic to this real world, like taking what we have today and moving beyond, the limitations that we have in our minds. So that's something on a personal level I really connect with. And when I was, brought into that position, they were really moving into a new direction with a very traditional industry and just a really good history, with that company. And as you develop your company and you build it in, the generational times when it was founded, trying to shift and stay relevant in the current times can always be really trying. So I really loved the opportunity to come in and really look at what they were trying to do, and me understanding the demographics of what we want to see as we're up and coming professionals and where I believe the industry is going, and being able to play a part in that, in leading, the executive team on why this needs to happen, how we're going to get there, and really just taking ownership over that was something that I will always hold really dearly to my heart. I was able to, create, the insights to how we market our products. There was a large variety of products from ice melt to hospitality to pool and spa. So there's many different demographics. One minute you're talking to the manager of a hotel, and the next you're talking to, the owner of a construction company that's strictly talking about asphalt in the bed of his truck. So you have very different, client personas, and, you need to be able to shift gears pretty easily and understand, how to, better integrate and communicate to their problems. And that can be really trying for people. So I really took a lot of time trying to map what the client personas are, what the stakeholders can be in any given situation, just allowing people to come in and be able to get up to speed, get more comfortable, and, explore those things in a more, vulnerable, but really safe way. And then also being able to identify that, purchasing habits are really different for each stakeholder. So being able to create, some of the marketing and new websites that were founded and working with the marketing teams directly to give them the insights I found really allowed me to put my hands in a lot of different areas in the business and really get really close with marketing and even just my clients and just trying to understand where they are and even just making their job easier for finding our product and being applicable to them so that they don't have to exhaust so much effort in finding a solution for them, and also for me not having to guide them as far. It made both of our lives easier. So I really found that connection there, making both the clients but also like our internal processes just easier on everyone. And that's, I think, where it really took off for me.
Because I know, and from there you moved on to where I met you, which was you were an account representative at Pharma Logistics. And this
Yeah.
was kind of an interesting job, which I feel like maybe deviated a little bit from kind of like this passion that you found at Brody Chemical, which was kind of, I felt like you had a little bit more creativity and you had a little bit more room to develop processes and think about the customer experience. I know that was something that you liked your job at Pharma Logistics. You got to travel a lot. I remember there were a lot of things that you really enjoyed about it, but I remember you also feeling that it was kind of like constrained you at times. Like it was and maybe just talk a little bit about what Pharma Logistics was and maybe how you felt like, just kind of like what your experience was there. And then we can get into, what you do now at Dental Intelligence.
Yeah, so I think some of your insights are right there. That there were some constraints. Being in a very, very traditional industry, working in healthcare, there are a lot of different connective pieces in that industry, from governmental to insurance to manufacturers to the hospital system itself. I think the position may not have been envisioned as far as what I would have liked to see it do, but I don't believe that stopped me in making my impact beyond my role. I really focused on, what that role was essentially streamlining the reverse distribution of expired medications from pharmacies. And there's a lot of lost revenue in healthcare systems from medications that expire, it increased the costs for patient care. Really affects the consumer, and this is something that I didn't have my radar on or really realize could impact healthcare for the entire nation. So I was able to learn a lot, and I really enjoyed being able to see from a different perspective, profitability on the back end, really understanding, how we can be good stewards to the economy, how we can, which manufacturers were accommodating the healthcare systems and what they were doing right to make that work for them. So for me, it put me in a really good place to be exposed to different stakeholders, personality types, and just a totally different industry. So I really enjoyed that because I was able to see, what money could be restored to healthcare through the expired medications.
Mm-hmm.
Some manufacturers actually issued credits back to the hospitals if it was unused or unopened. And so my job was essentially going through the data analytics to be able to find, medications that are returnable, and basically restore that money back to the hospital. Where I found a lot of my joy in that job, I was really focusing on, the client expectations and really just aligning with trying to reduce the cost of healthcare for consumers as a whole. And I found really good alignment with, the businesses being able to identify high value drugs that may not have been returnable. And moving beyond my role of just returning money to healthcare, really lending myself as an advocate to the hospital, and moving beyond my role and saying that these drugs are not returnable. It's going to cost you $7,000 every time that this vial expires. Crofab is an antivenom for snakes, and you have to have it on hand in case something happens. But if it expires or the fridge goes out, that money's gone. And so I was able to work with them and improve processes for my clients, really serving them, and I think aligning with them beyond the expectations of my role, and letting them know, while we may not be able to return this, I wanted to bring this to your attention. And I think, maybe kind of remapping your policy for what the stocking expectations are, and maybe developing an inter-transfer program. If you have a high-risk area and mapping where those are continually used, there may be some low-risk areas where if it's coming up to expiration within 6 months, you can have your fridge or your computer remind you about this drug that it's coming within 6 months of expiration. It may be a really good time for you to take that drug and transfer it to a new hospital, for a hospital that may use it. You're going to lose this money no matter what. So you might as well, give it the best opportunity available. And I found a lot of passion in that. There's so much room for improvement in healthcare, but it is a very slow moving industry, and there are a lot of connective pieces there. So I think that at the end of the day, regardless of my role, I found a lot of passion and kept that part of me alive. But I do agree that it may not have been as closely aligned with what the expectations of the role may have been to start with.
It sounds like, and I think this is, it sounds like you're trying to find, the things that you enjoy and the things that you're passionate about, which is, really the client service, the client experience, and how to make that, how to optimize that, how to take that to the next level. And even though that wasn't necessarily part of the role, you were trying to bring that into it because it's something that you're passionate about and that you care about. And then I wanted to, go into, ultimately, and I know you worked super hard to get this job at Dental Intelligence. You spent a lot of time networking. You spent a lot of time reaching out to people, connecting to people. And I guess, maybe just talk briefly about how you went about, how you found the company, how you went about applying for the job, and kind of just talk about maybe that, because it's very different. You went from basically working for a legacy pharmaceutical logistics company, which I'm sure there's a lot of interesting things and then to basically like a cutting edge tech, Silicon Slopes tech company. And so it's not necessarily, I feel like, the same worlds. I mean, it's different worlds. And so how did you find you were able to take off from one and land on the other?
Yeah, so I would say, it's interesting. You're right. When I look at from the outside in, they are different worlds. But internally, my passion and my purpose has always been very closely aligned.
Right.
And that's been what's always truly guided me. So it is a different world. And I think that I did run into a lot of, that's what made this so trying, was, a lot of this traditional world, people will see, the roles that you are in, and you kind of get typecasted. And you'll take a role and you kind of follow this trail, and people say, you've done this is where you'll go. This is the clear, path line. And, I've always seen, what I brought to the table beyond kind of what that role is. And I'd say that was a huge, of a huge benefit to me, because I really saw what I want to bring to the table regardless of my role and how that fits into this. And I think that the thing that, was most interesting during this time was that, through the pandemic, it really forced me to get out of my head, really, collaborate and meet with people and define my purpose and becoming more human. I never thought that this virtual world was going to make me more human, was going to force me to, bring more humanity into, my interactions. So getting into LinkedIn and, really defining my personal brand and moving beyond, some of the resentment that I think some people will feel when they first get on LinkedIn. They may feel like it's, it's self-promoting, or it's, not of interest to them, and, it doesn't connect with them personally. And I think for me, it really forced me to infuse who I am into my work and what I stand for into my work, and bringing more of that connection with others and connecting with them, and, and asking them, what is your cultural experience? Like, how do you feel about your industry? What is your leadership style? Getting people to talk to me and hearing the hot words that were within that industry. The core of it was really, really applicable, but the hot words were what made it hard for me to transfer. They'll use, especially in tech, a lot of abbreviations like, now, sales, being SDRs and BDRs and ADRs and AEs and EAEs, whatever you want to call it. There's abbreviations for anything and everything in tech. And when you can't speak to them, you can kind of feel like a loser. Honestly, you're like, I don't know what's going on. I don't know how to, like, what is SaaS? Like, what are these things? And it's kind of you out yourself in that moment, trying to make that transition. But it really forced me to be vulnerable again. And I'm so grateful for that, because it forced me to move beyond, be vulnerable, grow, and learn something new. So I reached out to people on LinkedIn. Connecting with the customer experience committee is something that really aligned with my operations mindset. Seeing that COVID has really forced businesses to take a more proactive approach to what customer success is. There's been this new age kind of revelation where it used to be account managers that would sell it and kind of maintain it. They were the point of contact, and that was considered a good thing. But we're moving into this new realm where we no longer have account managers and customer support. We have started to find value in the connective tissue in between. In order to enable salespeople to sell more, we need to have someone to maintain it and maintain that relationship, but also be proactive. But when issues come up that, may be beyond, proactive approaches, that they are reactive, we need a team to be able to be, support, to support that and help guide them through their issues there. But when it comes to maintaining the relationship and keeping a really, good upward trajectory and maintaining momentum, that's where a CSM comes in. And I personally really align with, relationships with people, maintaining it. I enjoy, change management, process improvement, all of those things. And the CSM has a lot of opportunity there to connect with people and even just, being more personal with them and say, what are your goals? What are you trying to accomplish? Why are you here? A lot of it can be very, consultative, and I enjoyed that aspect. I've enjoyed sales. I've enjoyed the psychology of it, but at the end of the day, I've always been more of an operations psychology kind of guy, and I found a lot of connection in the CSM community.
And so, I guess, what does CSM actually stand for? What does it mean?
Yeah, so a CSM is a customer success manager. You'll sometimes hear people questioning, should it be client success manager or customer success, depending on the industry. Like banking, they may call it client, because there's just an expectation. You're kind of blending that traditionalism with this new age role. But essentially the roles should be the same, but I will tell you that as you look into the CSM world, they're not all the same, because like I said, it is more of a new age role. And I think that the biggest thing I would tell anyone to looking into that role is always ask the person you're interviewing with or people that are in that role, what does customer success mean to you? Some places have not really defined that well, and they've chosen to, evolve their account manager roles into a CSM, and it's really more of a sales role that's not taking as much of a proactive approach, and they've chosen to kind of consolidate the roles. When I think if you speak with most, people really involved in the CSM community, we would all really agree that it is not a sales role. There's cross-selling opportunity, there's upselling opportunity, but it's really more of a customer-centric role that's not focused on that element. So if that's something you want, always ask them what does customer success mean to them, because my opinion of it could be very different than other businesses.
Why do you feel like, I feel like a CSM role, kind of just like what you were saying before, in terms of kind of like industry jargon or AEPs, BSMs, kind of some of the different acronyms that you were throwing at that before. I mean, we have that in finance too. We say things sometimes like EBITDA or asset allocation. We have kind of jargon words and things like that too. And but I guess in general, like, why do you feel like, why is a CSM so, it seems like it's only a job that really exists in kind of like the tech community. It doesn't seem like a job that has kind of proliferated out, into other industries. I mean, I think about, for instance, what I spend time on at Albion is, I mean, a lot of times I think about how can I make this process, I think about kind of the same thing that you do. How can I improve that process to lead to a better experience and ultimately success? For my internal clients, which are, the financial advisors, the portfolio managers, and my team, and the owners of the company, and to external clients, to the people that hire us to help manage their money. But we don't have a CSM, but I feel like I can. So why do you think, I guess, it's something that's kind of like unique, and I feel like we would benefit from somebody like that. I feel like we would definitely benefit from somebody that just focused on that client success management or customer success management. But why do you feel like it's something that's unique to the tech industry?
So it's interesting. I love that you called that out, that you think that it sounds unique to the tech industry. I would actually go the polar opposite way. CSMs are ingrained everywhere. They may not be called it. Your plumber is a CSM. He is, in a traditional world. He's not selling you. He's not doing this and that. He's coming and he's reacting to the call.
Yeah.
He's seeing your issue. He's acknowledging your issue. He's working to fix it. And he's also trying to make sure you're happy so that he gets a good experience, that he gets a good rating, that you want to use them again. He's a CSM. We have CSMs everywhere. But I think, what it is there's going to be, a difference in what defines success for that business. And on top of that, culturally, have they defined what success means to them well enough? Like, a CSM is only as good as the vision. If we're trying to encourage vulnerability and honesty, we have to be encouraging that internally. And so I think that that's, where it's really pushing businesses beyond the traditional constructs and realms, is that we're becoming more human, we're becoming more real, and consumers are more selective now more than ever, to where they want to invest in the community. And so the CSM is really that role in between that allows you to have more of that real human connection with them, and try to just really dissect and organize the values of the customer with the values of the business, and try to align the two. We have goals, and we have actions that drive towards your goals, but what are your thoughts and feelings? Just because I got you to where, let's say we finished onboarding you, or we sold you, you've purchased, like, what did we do to get you to purchase, and what were your thoughts and feelings along the entire way? Just because you crossed the finish line, that's not good enough. It's not good enough. We need to move beyond that and realize that, the things that we do to get you to cross the finish line have either a positive or a negative effect on you. And that's where the CSM, I think, comes in and tries to maintain a more proactive approach with them, in understanding that, or driving alignment within the company, between that, that relationship, the goal, and the emotional response, and being more of like a brand advocate. So I think that they're applicable in really any industry. And on top of that, a CSM is only one facet of the entire community. So, maybe if they don't want to have a CSM, there are, CS operations, customer success operations. But, once you've defined the operation, who is executing on the operation? You may not call them a CSM, but someone's being a CSM. Someone is executing on that, that value. And whether you've spread it amongst multiple teams or not, those things are being done. And I think that the CSM is really there as an advocate for both the customer and the business to reduce silos. We're there to say, marketing is sending this, and this is what the customer is receiving, and they're reaching out and they're getting the support, and they know nothing about marketing sending it. So now support is saying, I'm sorry, I don't know where to send you. Please reach out to your account manager if you have more questions. They reach out to them. They're like, let me follow up. I don't really know what's going on.
Yeah.
That's not creating a good reaction. So marketing has this, perspective that they're creating brand presence and opportunities for the customer. And in the meantime, the customer's confused. They've been told to reach out. They've reached out. They don't know what to do. They reach out to them. There's obviously a lack of confidence in their own processes. So even if they eventually get what marketing said, it left the customer with a feeling. They now don't feel that there's a cohesive and an open communication or dialogue within the company. And that's where the CSM comes in, to make sure that we are creating systemic alignment throughout the entire customer journey. And if not, we're elevating those things and being proactive about trying to fix them along the way.
I think that brings up a great point. That is so frustrating to me sometimes. I mean, you basically preventing the runaround, like preventing, like the having consistent communication at all channels. I hate it when I have a problem or a software problem and I reach out to somebody and, for help, and, you need to talk to so-and-so, that is one of my least. So, I mean, do you feel like that, maybe not necessarily at its core, but is a critical function of CSM, is blending those, the different, I guess, silos, kind of like, just like what you said, like, the different, you usually have the closer or the account, the guy that comes in and does the sales presentation, does the feasibility presentation. And then they usually hand them off to like an implementation person. Okay, we're going to get all of your old data over, we're going to take all of your old systems and we're going to convert them over to your new systems. You have the implementation person. And then you have the person who manages the relationship going forward. And from your perspective, you're kind of looking at all of these silos and making sure that there is a clear message and a smooth or seamless experience, but for the client, for the customer. And that's kind of what you think about it.
Driving that experience, and maybe not all, CS members are as passionate about, driving, the experience and removing the silos. Some people may prefer to follow someone that already set that vision and they're just executing on that vision. But a lot of my passion, as I've kind of shared with you, is really, moving into that area of operations and defining, we may have gotten them to onboarding, and, but how did we get them to onboarding? What was the communication? What was the dialogue? What was the handoff? When it finished in sales, where did we lose momentum, or did we lose momentum at all? Do we have a process for the sales rep to hand that off to an onboarding specialist? And what is that process? And, if there's, maybe some places haven't defined that well, and they may be emailing the onboarding specialist and saying, reach out to this person and 2 weeks pass, or there's, no set, cadence for that. There's a loss in momentum, and there's a loss in trust in that moment for the customer, not feeling like there's an open communication, or worst case, it passes over and they don't send an email to them, and that momentum is lost. And the customer now, like I don't think the businesses have realized that, when they reach out and say, hey, what's going on? I'm waiting for the next steps. Traditional businesses may have responded and said, oh yeah, we're getting that scheduled. Let's get you scheduled now. To me, that's a horrible experience. Like, it's one thing that you're getting it scheduled, you got the goal, congrats on that. But beyond that, what was the thought and the feeling that still got them to the goal? Like, you lost their trust in that moment. And, what momentum could have been restored and retained, that guides them through the entire journey. Because if you instill them with that confidence and that customer-centric process, you're creating advocacy, and that advocacy doesn't end there. It continues throughout the entire journey. And we all really have a responsibility to make sure that we are, we have good connective tissue between our processes. And that's where I think the role of CS operations comes into play with it. All customer success managers have the responsibility to elevate those concerns to their leaders and really drive that, to leading towards a customer-centric business. But not all CSMs have to have an operations mindset. That's something that I personally really connect with. But, I know that, a lot of CSMs really find joy in just elevating those concerns for someone else to do that. So sorry about that.
That's okay. Is that Bosley? Which one is that?
Bosley and Ty. So they're loving this work from home life. But yeah, as I was saying, there's a lot of opportunity in the CS world. Depending on what your niche is, I've kind of defined, like, I think what the purpose is and what the high roof line is, and then what the actions are that we need to execute on. But essentially, it's driving that higher customer experience. We're not just being reactive and responding when things go bad. We're driving and defining what a good experience is for both the brand and what we stand for, but also aligning that with what we're seeing in the field. We're kind of the front line and seeing what is the customer experience and how are we mapping that. Does that answer it decently?
Yeah. I think it helped me understand, or hopefully helped other people understand, kind of how you think about breaking down the silos and why, and ultimately why it's important it's about make how people feel, how you're making them feel throughout the process. And I think one of the things that you said, in kind of like our intro call, that I think totally kind of like speaks a little bit to just your passion for how people feel was, you said, if you don't want complacent answers, don't ask complacent questions. And it's kind of like the exit survey that says, how would you rate your experience today? 1 through 5. 5. Would you recommend us to a friend? 5. Whatever, doesn't even make sense really anymore. But you're just going 5 all the way down the list because you're not really that interested, or you don't really care too much about. You said you do the survey, so you're doing it. But you give me the example of, maybe asking a sort of like more intimate or more valuable question, which was, how did this make you feel? Trying to get at how people feel during the experience. And I feel like that's something that you're super passionate about. And I think you're a super passionate dude in general. One of the things I wanted to ask you about, you have 2 books that are really important to you. One of them is the Tao Te Ching, right? And I think the kind of like moral or lesson that you got from that was, finding out what your why is. When I think about what's your why, I think about Simon Sinek's Start With Why. And I did a little research on the Tao Te Ching, and the thing that I liked about it that they said was, naming, when you name things, or when you name things, it kind of takes a little bit of their spirit away. What's best known. I should just look up the quote. Where was it?
Yeah, I think what you're getting at while you're looking for
the
it.
Tao is both named and nameless. And the Tao is kind of like your kind of like the peace, or your passion, or it's kind of like who you are. It's like finding yourself a little bit. And the idea is kind of just that you can't really define it. It's not something that you can put your finger on. It's not necessarily like in the example that I was reading. It's not necessarily like Christianity, where God is good. You do these things, you go to heaven. This book is much more about trying to find the answers within yourself. And I mean, maybe just talk a little bit, I guess, about what this book means to you, and how it's impacted, or how you've used the lessons from this book and applied them to your role at Dental Intelligence.
Yeah, so I would say, what I really got from the Tao Te Ching is, trying to live your life as an open bowl. And what I got from that was that there's equal value in having substance and emptiness at the same time. Emptiness makes way for new lessons and newness in your life. And so for me, it screams of vulnerability and the balance between knowledge and not knowing, and that there is power in both knowing and not knowing. Because if you know everything, your bowl is so full that you have overdefined your reality, and you may miss something. You may actually like unravel your knowing by knowing. So the more that you know, the less room you allow to unlearn what you know so far. And generations and desires and things are constantly shifting, and I think that there's such a delicate balance between where we are today and where we're going to tomorrow. So for me, it's a constant reminder to remain vulnerable, to question things, to be a lifelong learner, and allow space for other people in your life. For me, passion is it's definitely something that I feel a lot in my life. I'm a very passionate person. I'm very expressive. I enjoy experiences in every regard, from my professional to my personal life. But with that, I always say your greatest strength will be equal and parallel to your greatest failure. That's something that, I've always said I've personally really connected with, because if you're really strong, I mean, it's a natural law. It's an order to this world that if you're really strong, you're probably not very flexible. But if you've worked on becoming flexible and strong, you're probably a little more lean and not as bulky. So the bulkier you get, the less lean that you are, but the more lean you are, the less strong you are. And it's very similar. That's what the Tao Te Ching has really shown me, is balance. It's really reminded me of, don't strive to be maybe too much, allow room to not label, things. Because once you've labeled it, it's lost room to grow. Once you called out what it actually is, it's defined, it's boxed, it has no room to improve, and your brain has closed off. So I think understanding or leaving room for others to, teach you lessons or make you question the world is something that I've really valued and I've tried to keep alive in my life. And that's really helped me, in my professional life, especially as a CSM. My experiences and my desires are probably very different than yours and many other businesses. And the only way I think that I would be as capable of hearing them and giving them that space is by really focusing on, really remaining and striving towards keeping my bowl as empty as possible, really receiving. And, passion can fill a room with so much. And at the same time, not allow room for other people to share and express in that passion. And, I share that in vulnerability. I know that I have my flaws. I know other people do too. And I try to share those things and really, I think sometimes run with my demons or acknowledge them, because if I know that they're there, they don't gain as much power over me. And so those are kind of some of the things that I've really embodied from that book.
I love what you said about, your bowl is kind of empty and you really want to receive. You're trying to receive the world. I love this book called The Go-Giver, and it's 5 lessons for stratospheric success. It's kind of a corny title, but rule number 5 is the law of receptivity. You need to be open to receiving the world and what it has to offer you. And if you're closed off and hyper-focused on whatever you think you need to do or whatever you think you need to be, or you're not looking at what could be possible. You don't have the opportunity to fill up your bowl. And so I love that analogy. And I think, being open to receiving is super important. The other book that's super important to you is called The Power of Now. And maybe you just talk a little bit about that and how it's impacted your life and your career.
Yeah. So The Power of Now, I want to say it's my favorite book. It's hard to say that though. I love The Power of Now because every time you read it, you're reading it in the now. And the now is so different than every other thing that you've ever experienced. And it's just this really cool book that I think really forces you to just feel the moment again and recalibrate. It's like a full reset for your system. Like you've just rebooted your computer and wiped it. And you're like, I've lost all these things, but I have so much room for so much more again. Like finally things are speeding up, everything's working again. And The Power of Now, I think my biggest takeaway from that was that, not to get, too far down this, metaphysical realm, but time is a continuum that we've really created. And they said that when you're born into this world, there is no fear, there is no pain, there's only love, there's only, this present moment. And they do a really good job, I think, of recalibrating you to be in this moment and realize that, fear and anxiety don't exist in this moment, in this now, in this world. It always exists in a future or past time. So you're either worried about where you're going or what's going to happen to you, or if this doesn't happen, this will happen to you, or you're worried about something that has happened to you that you don't want to happen again. But neither actually exist. None of them are actually here. You're in the now, and that's not here. You're always, if you're worried, it's always future or past oriented. And they also said that anything that's ever happened has always happened now. Nothing in this world has ever happened anywhere other than now. And it was really just a really good moment for me, I think, to open myself up to that power of now and realizing, I think everyone has experienced wanting to do well at something. I'm sure when you started this podcast, where do I start? How am I going to be received? How are people going to look, upon me? What are my mannerisms? How do I build this? How do I do this? And all of that, it can turn into a fear really quickly. And, you start wondering, okay, well, I could flop here, or I need to do this. Otherwise this is going to happen, or I need to have this. Otherwise this is going to happen. What would happen if you were to set a goal and you just said, I need this to do this, and I need this to do this, and you just did it now? If you need it, do it now. Don't wait for, your fear in the future. And if something goes wrong, in the future, which you shouldn't even be thinking about, but it happened now. And you can think about now what you can do to correct that and fix that. And I just think that as close as you can get to the present moment, and I understand I'm not always in that moment, but I think what it really drove home for me is that the closest you can get to the present moment, that's where your power is. When there's a problem that arises in your life, what can you do now to fix it? Worrying, your fear, all those things, realize that it's in the future or the past. You're not even there yet. That's not your problem right now. You need to work on now. And so for me, that's been something that has helped me overcome many objections in my career, or being an operations mindset, having a lot of change management. I have to always refer to the power of now. I have to think about what I can do today to drive to where I want to be tomorrow, or all these things. But at the end of the day, if I don't get done today or now what's needed, tomorrow will never be here. Like that will never happen. So really just staying focused and removing the anxiety and the fear of that future or past oriented self, I think has restored a lot of power within me. And I think that it's really what's allowed me to, even remove fear and anxiety from those I work with. When, practices join into dental intelligence, there's a, sometimes maybe their practice isn't as profitable, or they're struggling with impacting culture, or they have all these, personal P's going on, that persevere, like basically preserving yourself, or profitability, or prestige. There's all these different layers that they're going through, that they're latching onto, and there's a fear attached there. So I think for me, removing the fear from people's lives and getting them to see rationally where we're at and what we can do now to fix that will allow your present moment to become your reality. If you want, I kind of think that if you want a seat at the table, or you want to be somewhere in your life, you have to bring that here now. You have to be that person now. You're not going to ever have that job that allows you to wear that shirt or that jacket or drive that car if you don't do something now to emulate that person. Really thinking about, who is that person? How would they, and get beyond their, the materialistic things. How would they eat? How would they sleep? What would their workout regimen be like? What would they smell like? Anything, make them real and embody that. That's your reality. That's what you've made. That's what you imagine that person to be. And you have the ability to be every bit of that person. It's within you. You know that it's there. You've imagined it. And really taking that into the power of now and being that person today, so that you can be that person tomorrow or next week, you have to do it now. That's the only way you can do it. And so that is something I'm really passionate about as well.
I think I'm reading a book by Jay Shetty. It's called How to Think Like a Monk. And he talks about, fear and anxiety live in the past and the future. And if you can kind of everything that you just said, taking a seat at the table now, focusing on the now. I think that has a big impact on my life. Thinking about what I could have, thinking about choices that I've made in the past where I wish I had made a different choice, or thinking about the uncertainty of the future and how that can scare me. I think all it does is distract me from what I'm trying to focus on, or what I'm trying to do in this current moment. So I think
when something bad goes wrong in your life, I think that, some people will maybe say, well, when something happens, how do you not reflect on what led you there? How do you not reflect on, what got you to that point? And it kind of looks like a negative thing, that you're not taking accountability for it. But really what it is that if you're always focused on the now and you're driving towards your goals and now, you're either going to hit that mark or you're going to miss it. And it's okay to miss your mark. It really is, as long as you know that you've driven, in that direction. And when you hit that moment, when you missed your mark, don't get distracted then by the fear of the past. What can you do now again to fix it? What can you do now to learn from your mistakes? What can you do now to be able to move forward? Don't like, you can't, that's paralyzing. It's good to reflect on what got you to where you are. But it's always going to come back to the now. Don't reside in those other places. They just don't actually exist.
Right. Well, I wanted to take a second. Is it cool if we look at your resume? I think Jaxson has the coolest resume, and I wanted to share it with everybody. So I'm going to put it up on my screen here. Share. There we go. Oh, speaking of technical difficulties, I almost did it again. You have to click share like twice. And I did the other day. I was making a video and I was doing this really great job. And I thought I had shared my screen on my tablet, and I can like animate it and like draw. And so I thought I was recording the screen, and I was drawing these pictures, and I was doing these formulas, and everything was so good. I went on for like 15 or 20 minutes, and I looked up and I had not actually successfully shared the screen. I was like, oh my God.
Oh,
And then
man.
I tried to do it again. And I couldn't capture that same wind that I had when I did it that first time. Like that first time was so good. And then I tried to do it again. And
you know what it is? It's because you weren't in the power of now. You then tried to recreate what you already knew. Yeah. So you were in your flow. In that moment when you were in the now, it was perfect. It was good. You were feeling it. It was real to you. It was honest. But as soon as it wasn't, going back to that place of like, let me try to recreate this moment in the light of how perfect it was the first time. And that's when it all unravels.
That's the power of now right there. It's a perfect example of the power of now. I was so upset. I just went to bed. But look at this good looking guy right here, dude. This is where is this picture taken?
Oh man. So that actually was taken in Arizona. I had a meeting for actually when I was working with Pharma Logistics for like a dental or for the pharmaceutical committee. So just taken there, and I liked it and just kind of used it ever since.
So I thought this was super cool when you sent this to me. I usually ask all of my guests to send me their resume just because it's easy to go over, and I feel like it helps me understand their experience, and without me having to ask a whole lot of questions. And so this was definitely, part of the beginning of the interview, but, maybe just talk about how you made this and what the process was like in, gathering feedback for it. And I guess how it's been like, is this the application you used when you applied at Dental Intelligence?
Yeah. So it was a little bit different than this. It's similar. I mean, obviously, as I added some things in there, each time I think you kind of layer and refine to making it, in perspective to who you are today. But very similar. I use the same layout, a little bit of tweaking here and there, but, roughly the same. So.
And when you were reaching out to people about it, you were trying to get some feedback on kind of just, what did people say about it? Was it well received? Did people like it? I mean, I feel like I like it because I feel like it's very different from my resume, which is a very boring Word doc with lots of bullet points that I actually paid. I would recommend, when people ask me for resume help, I just say, go pay somebody $100 to write your resume. That's usually what I say, because they are going to do a way better job of making you sound like a badass than you are. Is my take on that. Like I read the resume that they wrote for me afterwards. And I was like, I sound like a freaking rock star. I would never use these words that they use to describe what I do, or describe myself. And so that's always been my feedback on resumes. But I love this, and I actually went and made one of these. I know the secret. But I actually went and today, earlier before this, when I was looking at this, I was like, I'm going to go make one of these just like Jaxsons, because I think it's so great. So what has the feedback been? Do people like this kind of like maybe less traditional format, or what do you think?
I think I've gotten, like everything in life, you're going to get mixed feedback depending on where you're applying and what you're doing and what industry that it's in. I may tweak this slightly if I were to go back into the pharmaceutical or, hospital industry. They're probably not looking for this much expression. They may look for something that's a little bit more traditional, which is totally fine. really knowing your audience, I think, where you're trying to fit in, I think is really key here. Connecting with people, asking what the culture's like, sending it to people that, are maybe in those positions that aren't, the hiring manager or the director, and just saying, hey, I'm looking to get into this industry. I've put together my resume. Would you mind giving me some feedback, or like, let me know what the culture is there, kind of getting a pulse on things with people and figuring out kind of, what, how they communicate, what are their hot words, kind of all those different things. But for me, creating that, I was very focused on getting into the tech industry. And I knew that there were going to be, there was going to be some pushback, being that I don't have direct tech experience prior. I guess you could say they can be very sassy, that's kind of their
sassy.
thing. So,
that's like a tech pun. That's like a
it
tech
is,
industry
yeah,
pun.
because SaaS is
Oh my
SaaS,
gosh.
software as a service.
As
So
a
they're
service.
super clicky. They're very sassy.
I mean, that is basically, I mean, dental intelligence is that. I mean, it's a
it is a
software
tech
as
company.
Yeah.
Exactly. And, I think for me, what I was trying to do in that resume was bring more life to the process for me. I wanted to tell people I'm tech capable. I wanted to just tell them I'm a millennial. I'm going to figure it out.
Yeah.
I'm fine. Don't worry about me. We're good. If I was just being totally honest with a recruiter, that's probably how I would say it.
Right.
But that's not the way you can go about things in this world. So for me, I was trying to really showcase that I'm adaptable, that I'm agile, that I'm, capable of figuring things out without telling them I'm capable, I'm agile, I'm adaptable. That sounds desperate. That sounds like you're trying to like really tell them like, please choose me. I wanted to tell them to choose me or put me in the seat without me having to ask the question. So that's kind of the philosophy that I brought into it. Was through the pandemic. I went through, probably a good 2-month process of using a traditional resume that has just your bullet points of what it is, just very traditional, like your name at the top, phone number, no picture, no colors, just really simple. And I can't tell you how exhausting it was through the pandemic, submitting those forms and just sending it out and just feeling so empty and so dry and losing your faith in who you are. And so for me, I kind of like took it back to that power of now and allowing room for more. And that's when I started to have fun. That's when I started to really connect with it and started to realize, you know what, I need more humanity in this process. And that is who I am. And that's what I plan to bring. And if my resume isn't exuding who I am, I'm probably going to be employed in the wrong room anyways.
Yeah.
So really, I think, bringing it back to that more creative space for me allowed me to tell them who I am and what I plan to bring without really having to like tell them so much. So I wanted them to know that I was, I'm really adaptable. And I thought I'd tell them that by putting a QR code on there. I was like, you know what, I'm going to put a QR code on there so that they, can kind of, have an emotional response and a reaction and be like, oh, whoa, this dude's kind of cool. Like he knows he's thinking outside of the box. Right to my LinkedIn.
Oh, super
I want them
cool,
to know
dude.
that if they need to look at more reviews or recommendations, I don't want to blast people with information. I'm not trying to sell myself like that. I'm just trying to say, this is who I am. If you want to know more about who I am, if you want to know what I stand for and the ways I engage in the community, go here. This is one paper. My life and my purpose and my impact does not fit on one piece of paper, but I realize you probably have 200 applications and you don't have time to sift through 4 pages of my life. Now, if this draws your attention, feel free to use the QR code and expand further. I want to give them the option. And a part of that is I really wanted to show them that I'm so dedicated to the process and the customer experience that I didn't just type my name with follow me on LinkedIn. I put a QR code. I reduced your process of going into LinkedIn, clicking the search bar, typing my name. By then, like, do you actually even care? But if you see a QR code, like that might be kind of cool. So I really wanted people to feel something throughout the process. And I think, for me, at the end of the day, that brought more joy and more life to the process for me. And that matters to me. So whether it's received by everyone else, I align with that purpose. I align with my intention. And I've had some good feedback. I think that I have made myself memorable to some of those people. And I think that, other people that I've sent it to, it's kind of piqued their interest. And I think that it's brought more hope and more life to them as well. And at the end of the day, that's my purpose. I want to take out, kind of some of that, like that boring traditionalism that sometimes can just dry the process throughout. So really just kind of modernizing and bringing that creativity back in alignment in the process. And just, I guess spoiler, I mean, it's an easy thing. It's free. Everyone can use Canva. There's some templates on there. And I do recommend, like Scott said, having someone write your resume. I think that, there's really no like right or wrong way, like do this or do that. I actually think that if you can use them collectively, it would be exceptionally powerful. So I do have a traditional resume that I may send to more traditional positions, but I also have this. And you can also take that traditional resume and use that as the foundation that you like layer into your Canva resume. And that's Canva, CANVA.
I'll put a link in the description to the video because I think it's so great.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really, really creative, just a really creative application that you can use it for so many things. So I think taking that and layering it in there allows you to bring more life to who you are. And I think that it's really presentable and fun when you're sending it to people who may not be the hiring manager. When you get in LinkedIn and you send it to someone that's just a regular employee that's not like hiring or not doing anything, and they may be on the team, I personally would way rather see that. If I had a stranger send me a traditional resume that had the bullet points, I would literally think in my mind, my experience is, who do you think you are for me to care so much to take my time out of my day to read your resume when it's black and white, it's dead. I don't care. You know what I mean? I mean, like, let's just be honest. I don't care. Like, I wish the best for you. I care about that. But like, it feels self-interested. It feels very self-focused. And when I look at the other one, it's like, oh, this is visually interesting. I'm kind of intrigued. This is kind of fun. I'm kind of inspired myself to go do something with mine. And I wanted people to feel that. And that's really what I wanted to drive home same thing in my life. I want people to feel things. I want people to experience things. And that's the impact I really plan to bring. And I wanted to show them that. I didn't want to tell them that. I wanted them to really feel it.
I feel like it's all so connected. Your passion for customer success, your passion for, the power of now and being present. And then, and then taking that process, and then you even put it in your resume with the QR code and making sure that people have a great experience reading your resume. I think it's so awesome. I think it's so great, dude. And so I did something different with this episode with you. This is my 5th show. I feel like it's going okay. I've had fun so far. I posted a teaser that you were coming on the show, and I asked people to post some questions. So are you ready for a little Q&A with LinkedIn?
Yeah,
LinkedIn Q&A?
I am. Let's go.
The first one's going to be, I feel like it'll be a softball from your honey, from your sweetie. Lauren Sanders. Do you know who that is?
I know who that is.
Yeah. She says, how do you keep your momentum/focus when searching for a new job through the pandemic?
I mean, she would know best. I mean, she was really a backbone through all of that. Really just seeing me go through the process. I think, part of like even her giving back to me was, connecting with humanity again. There was a time when I think I lost that connection throughout it, not knowing, where to go and who to connect to and how to apply. And like I said, going on LinkedIn and speaking with people and hearing what they're going through and hearing what their process is, it humanized me. It allowed me to get in with them and, really just understand what they're going through and maybe even elevate my resume, to people that they were considering. And being more creative in that process rather than getting lost in the field of resumes that we're going through. But I think for me, what kept me alive through the pandemic was the immense amount of opportunity for growth through trauma. So like there's, basically post-traumatic growth. We had our wedding plan in June of this last year in 2020. And when everything happened, it seemed like March, everything just shut down. Everything was closed. The NBA, everyone was done. And we were horrified. We had everything planned in Costa Rica, the napkins, the decorations, the venue, everything. And we basically had to cancel our entire wedding. And that was devastating. But tying that again into just, that present moment, we really thought about, if this isn't working right now, when is it ever going to work? And what can we do to make this work for us today? And we really, leaned into that. And the biggest thing I learned through the pandemic was don't resist it. Lean into the pandemic, feel it, really experience it. Don't overcome the objections too quick. People overcome objections and want to live their life in a happy place all the time. And, reality check is that life is not supposed to be happy all the time, and it's not supposed to be fair all the time. You're supposed to have these ebbs and flows. And I was like, how do I allow myself to ebb and flow here? So really leaning into it and feeling what was happening in the world and how I can make what's happening today beautiful. So we decided to have a local, venue at the Church of Dirt here up in Park City.
Mm-hmm.
And, having that, I think really, really reframed what a marriage is and, the purpose of it, and really feeling the grit of the earth, the dirt, the Church of Dirt, feeling that and having the distractions removed allowed us to really save a lot of money. We went from having maybe a $35,000 or $40,000 wedding down to a $4,000 wedding. And I'm talking including, the dress, the photographer, the makeup, the hotel room, the venue, and, like a 5-course meal at the River Horse on Main with a pianist, like the whole thing. I mean, it was incredible that we were able to whip this together and, have everything be as beautiful as it was. And we took the money that was remaining and decided, we want to make this a true marriage. We're going to buy a home. And, the current, rates right now are great. Let's take advantage of these rates and let's, give back to the economy and let's invest in the economy and let's buy a home. Let's be a part of this. And, it forced Lauren and I to truly come together. For the first time, we got to choose the cabinets in the house, the flooring, the walls, the location, our address. We got to choose everything there. And it was all because we embraced the fact that our wedding had to be canceled. So for me, just really connecting with humanity and connecting with what is happening today, I think really pushed me through the pandemic.
I think kind of like while we're on the topic of the pandemic, how do you feel COVID has impacted your industry or your role? Like, I guess we've kind of just glazed over this whole thing that is the pandemic, maybe because it feels so normal now, or maybe because people are kind of tired of talking about it. I don't know. But I mean, you did have a lot of things change in your life between getting married, buying a house, starting a new job. Lauren also started a new job, I think.
Yeah.
Didn't she?
So, well,
she got a promotion.
She's driving towards it right now. So
yeah.
she got a promotion, but she's also driving towards, more change in the future as well. Wow. That she's, really, really focused on, working with people and allowing them the opportunities to, identify, employers that have best standards and best cultural care. Lucid is a phenomenal employer that has just, really impacted her every day. She's wearing some Lucid jogger sweatpants. I mean, she is wearing the swag. She is wearing the Lucid. We go on walks and she's wearing a Lucid jacket, and she's proud of it. She loves it. They take a really active stance on being actively anti-racist, and she connects with a lot of these community values, and they're not playing it safe. They're really, really taking an active stance in the community, and she loves that. She loves seeing the impact that they're bringing. And so she, I think, ultimately really wants to create alignment in, the people operations, human resources area, and, just has identified more of her purpose, that she wants to really drive that connection to the community and highlight this amazing employer.
And so going back to one of my friends is a account executive at Lucid. He loves working there too. Lucid seems like a super cool company. But I guess going back to, how do you feel like COVID has impacted like your industry or your role, like at Dental Intelligence?
I think that, maybe, I'm in this delusional state that I think that all this opportunity is so good, but my impression is that COVID has expedited the need for businesses to develop a true, honest, and stable vision for their company. And the customer success industry, or department, is going to be ever more needed in businesses as we move forward. If you don't have a good customer experience and you don't have someone owning that throughout the entire journey, consumers are going to come out of this pandemic more demanding than ever. They're going to expect certain things. Once I learned that I can have a curbside drop off in my robe, I don't think I want to go back. I love that. Let's keep that. And I didn't think I would have never left the house in my robe before, but I'm like, let's do this. Like, let's go get my coffee in a robe. This is my weekend. This is my time. That's what I'm going to do. And it's really shifted the ways that I've seen myself and just businesses and how they're giving back. And so I think that it really has shifted the demand for businesses to have someone owning experiences, and they give value to it. It used to be that businesses thought that emotions were dangerous, that we want to avoid emotion, that we don't want to involve ourselves in politics or, any activist movements, or, taking an active stance in, anything that's really happening in the world. This is business, and let's keep that out of it. And I think that consumers are going to come out of this swinging with a bat, saying, where do you stand? Why am I giving you my money? They're going to be more demanding beyond the product. They want to know what they're supporting beyond what they're going to receive. And that's going to put some severe pressure on businesses to really create alignment between the customer, the employee, and, basically like the executive experience. So they need someone to be owning that. And I think consumers are going to be demanding that more and more in the years to come. I know that I value that when I go to, Harmon's here locally. I know that they pay their employees well, and they will have, their floral shop is great, and I'll leave with another plant that I don't need, or they'll have baskets woven by, some Indian tribes where they donate 100% of the proceeds back to those families, and they give them opportunities for employment. And I left about a month ago with an $80 basket that I have no idea what I'm going to do with. It's just in my living room, but I feel great about it. And I'm going to keep shopping at Harmon's because I love that they give me an opportunity to give back. So I think that it's really demanded business to invest in the experience and not stray away and just, don't play it safe anymore.
I think that's so great, and how you found a way to tie in what you're passionate about into what your COVID experience has been and what you think companies should be doing. I think it's awesome, and I agree with you. I think that, professionally, from a business perspective and from an individual perspective, COVID has given everybody time to reflect on what's important to them, what they should be focusing on, and kind of develop some of those, maybe some either those processes from a business perspective, or maybe finding new hobbies or things to be passionate about from an individual perspective. I have another question here from Jeannie Walden. Do you know her?
Yeah. LinkedIn, not super well, but, briefly on LinkedIn, you kind of make these connections and see people frequently, but I'd love to hear what she had to say.
Well, I feel like people don't need to know you well to know that you have a lot of energy. And she wants to know how you maintain your energy level and genuinely harness so much passion. That was her question.
That's a
very nice thing to say.
Really nice. That's really kind. It seems almost like more like a statement. I love that. Thank you for that. I've got to think about that. I guess I've never really thought about like why I have it, since I kind of just feel it. I would say, just defining your purpose, defining what you stand for beyond your titles,
your purpose
and just
statement.
really, your purpose statement. What impact do you want to make on the world? And then, I think that's really driven me, that in everything I do, I'm always cross-referencing and checking to make sure that this is a part of who I am, that this is what I want to do, that this is where I want to be. And I think just once you find something that you care about, like on a deeper level, it just drives everything else. It takes so much momentum to move a boulder, but once you start moving it, it just starts rolling and you can't stop it. And once you find that, you have to find outlets to express that passion, because it's kind of like a boiling pot of steam. It'll just lift up and scream at some point if you don't find a way to express it. So I think a lot of people will think that it takes a lot of energy to maintain that, that level of passion. But I think what it is that once you really dive into that, your why, or what your purpose is, and what like repeating themes in your life keep reoccurring. Like, is it community? Is it giving back? Is it, like, what is your purpose? It dives into everything from your professional life to your personal life. And, you find these other outlets to connect with people and express because you care about it. It's not work anymore. And I think that that really allows you to transcend into so many different areas in your life. In my career, as you'd said, that these kind of look like different roles going from healthcare to this to that. And I've totally seen it differently because, my passion's always been aligned in this one area that it's totally connected. I think that the biggest struggle is getting other people to see that and restore their magic in the world, getting them to feel again, getting them to like have hope and trust and just check out of this like dry, state, getting them to see that again. I think that has given me purpose, and that's really just driven my passion.
That was a great answer, dude. That's why I wanted you to come on the show, man. I'm like, God, this guy is deep. He's got levels to him, man. So I got just a couple more questions, and then
Okay.
we could probably, this is definitely going to be the longest show that I've done, but I love it, man. I feel like I know you're so passionate about this stuff. You can talk about it forever. Nikita D, she says, what are some good customer success resources you have found and where? And this ties into kind of like my last question for you too. So
yeah, so I'll leave you with one that I've continually referred back to and really love. A leader, Jeannie Walters on LinkedIn. She has just been amazing at not only understanding what customer experience is, but really being vulnerable and creating and giving her resources completely for free. Really defining what the customer journey map is and explaining why it's valuable and giving you your why, but also following up with here's the thoughts, here's the goals, here's the actions. Do all of this and it will lead to this. And to find someone that's such an exceptional community steward and really drawing people in through giving back, that's something I stand for on a personal level. So I'm like, wow, like you're not only, like explaining the value in this and why it matters and, and taking it and saying, sign up for a course so I can help you. She's saying, no, I want more of you out there. I'm here for you. I'm an advocate for you. I'll help you. I'll respond to you. I'm a real human being that really just wants to give the resources for more of you to do the work that I'm fighting for today. It's really a movement for people to bring more humanity to the world and help align the operations and the employee and customer experience. And she's created some really, really good tools to allow more people to do that. She knows she can't do it alone. And I think, she's just kind of created like a vibe tribe where people are coming in and they're just really seeing that. And I think that she's an amazing resource. Her talk shows on Friday are amazing. Her website's amazing. And, she just has a lot in there. The other thing I would leave you with is a community called Gain, Grow, Retain. They're strictly a customer success community that really talks about different, basically things that you experience in that role, from churn mitigation, providing value to stakeholders. How do you create stakeholder buy-in to employee experiences when they cost this much with maybe no direct return in profits? How do you showcase these things, and how do you basically create value? Because all these things are great, but they can sometimes become intangible because they are emotional. So really drawing those lines into a metric oriented and operations mindset, I think they do a really good job of helping you balance both ends of the spectrum.
And I guess it kind of ties into having some good resources are important for people that are maybe interested in a career in customer success. I guess if you were to give yourself some advice from when you were younger, or maybe some people that are getting ready to graduate, who are thinking about a career in customer success, what advice would you give yourself, or would you give them?
I would say, I feel like I've repeated this a million times, so I hope it's not annoying at this point, but defining your why, defining your purpose is, the most important thing to me, regardless of whether you follow a traditional education system or a traditional plan. Whatever that is, I think that at the end of the day, when things go wrong in my life, I always return to my purpose. When things are good, I'm guided by my purpose. And I think that education, and as they're going towards graduating, you followed a path that, really has a rigid structure to growing and learning and following certain courses and doing things a certain way. And from what I have seen, with some of those that maybe are coming out of school, along the ways, they haven't defined their purpose because it hasn't been a focus in their studies, that they've found that they're good at certain things, but they don't know why they are good at those things and what drives them to enjoy those things. And I think I would love for people to define that. If you can define that as early on as possible, or at least just be on the search for it, just looking for it. That's amazing. Just keep your heart open to that, because titles and roles and environmental changes are going to be happening through the course of your life. And if you don't have much of a purpose, you're not going to allow yourself to transcend. And I think that that's where typecasting has become a large problem for people, is that they see themselves in a certain role. And if they're not in that role, or they don't continue to grow in a traditional way within that role, they're a failure. And, I think the thing is that, we're trained to eat, think, sleep, and count. And, how would you feel if you were told 2 + 2 is actually 6, not 4? And suddenly your world is flipped. How are you going to keep yourself open to this new world that's coming out? And I think just keeping yourself aligned with, the humanity in yourself and defining that purpose will allow you to transcend roles. You'll find purpose in whatever you're doing as long as it's connected to that. You won't be stuck within a role that's defined by someone above you. Just really making sure that you're driving your purpose, into your work life.
Well, Jaxson, I want to just thank you so much for spending so much time with me on this snowy Saturday afternoon. I know you said, I asked if it's all right if people reach out to you, if they found our conversation inspirational or motivating, or if they want to learn more about customer success. Jaxson said yes. So if you've enjoyed this conversation, please reach out to him. He said he'd be happy to talk with you, connect with you, answer any questions you have about customer success and working for Dental Intelligence. What's the best way for people to get in touch with you or to reach out to you?
I would say on LinkedIn. If you have a LinkedIn, I would love to see, who you are and how you've chosen to represent yourself. And, whether you're proud of that or you're not and you're embarrassed, don't be embarrassed. I would love to be there, for anyone and everyone in just exploring who they are in a really safe place. Just giving them the space to make mistakes, giving them the space to, collaborate and better define who they are, and removing yourself from the silos of your own mind. I think I would love to just provide that resource to people. If they have questions on their resume, if you need someone to just critique it, or if you need someone to just, roast it, if you can ask me to say, hey, roast my resume, roast it. I want someone to roast it. I want to see what the worst case scenario of my resume could be. If you're ready for that, I'll do it for you. Whatever you need. I just want to be there for people to help them, move beyond the barriers that they have today. So I would say LinkedIn is the best.
Awesome. Well, Jaxson, thank you so much for coming on the show. I'll be sure to put, links to everything that we talked about in the subscription to the video. Jaxson, thank you again so much, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks, Scott. I really appreciate it.
I want to say a big thank you to Jaxson for joining me on this episode of Digital Mentorship. I enjoyed our conversation about passion and incorporating that into your career. Our discussion about focusing on the present and developing your purpose statement are essential lessons in this journey we all find ourselves on. We learned about the importance of a customer success manager and its role in providing a seamless customer experience. Jaxson takes experience so seriously that he recreated his resume from black and white to communicate better. If you are interested in a career in customer success management or know someone who is, have them reach out to Jaxson or share this podcast with them. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe, like, and comment. It helps me with the algorithm. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Digital Mentorship. I'm your host, Scott Kellner. We'll see you next time.